Hi guys, today we are going to learn about JavaScript promises. Hello guys, today we are going to learn about JavaScript promises. Now JavaScript promises is quite frequently used, but sometimes it is confusing to understand. So today we are going to understand with a very simple example why we need promises and how we can implement to make our code better. So now let me show you this simple piece of code here, which is a function add that takes two numbers, does the addition, and returns the sum. Next, we have a variable result inside which we are able to get the value of the addition and display the result. A very simple piece of code. Now let us try to see the output of this program, and we will get the addition of two numbers, which is 9. Very simple. Now, I'm going to make a small change to understand why we need promises. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to delay the addition of this number. So I'm going to put a set timeout, which is to delay the execution of code, and I'm going to delay it by 8 seconds. And then inside this, I'm going to put all the code that I'm going to run. And now let us see what is the output. I'm also going to put some console messages like this one to just show that the function is getting executed. Function getting executed. Then we will have another line of code here, which is to mark, which is to show us that the delay is complete. And now I'm going to start the actual addition. So delay complete and addition started. Then next, I'm going to print the addition of two numbers. And here in the ending also, I'm going to add a console message to just demonstrate that the code execution flow is complete. Now, if we know a little bit about asynchronous code, we will see that first, when we call the add function, the control goes to the function, prints the message that the function is getting executed, and then the code sees that there is a delay of 8 seconds. So JavaScript will continue to execute till the end of the function, return undefined, alert the result, which is undefined, finish the console.log in the ending, and then wait for 8 seconds to finally execute this piece of code. That is how the code flow is going to happen. And because of that, I'm not able to get the addition. Instead, I get undefined because the entire code flows. And because this set timeout is asynchronous, it will happen after the entire execution of the code has happened. Now let us see the output and verify. And yes, I'm getting, oh, sorry, I just did not save, I believe. So let me save it now and then again try to run the piece of code. And what do we see here is undefined. Interestingly, if we check our console messages, we see that finally after 8 seconds, the execution happens and the addition is complete. But the code is not able to return the value to the result. Let's again check it. Undefined, function getting executed, code execution flow complete. After 8 seconds, we will see that the main addition starts. So we see that here is a delay, and that is why we can see that we are not able to get the output because the function code now is asynchronous, which means it is taking some time to actually return the value. And as far as I know, the only way in which we can solve this problem is using JavaScript promises. Let me just show you again an arrow diagram of how the code flow happens. So first we go with first line, function getting executed. Then after that, code execution flow is complete. That means entire flow is complete. So the code execution started from the top, from the top. And then after that, it came like this. So when the code of set timeout executes, it executes after the delay is complete. So this particular piece of code executes after 8 seconds. So this is the flow. If I give them as numbers, then this is going to be 1, first step. This flow is second, and this is number 3. That is how this particular piece of code is executing. And that is why I cannot get the return value in the result variable, and I'm not able to get the output as I'm expecting. So now let us try to solve this piece of code using promises. So to use promise, it's very simple. If we want to use promises, we just need to use the promise constructor and do a couple of other things which I'm going to show you now. Now, before we apply promises, what actually is a promise? A promise is basically a guarantee that the job would be done sometime in the future. So let's take an example. Well, the best example is of people working in regular jobs. So let us say there is a person A who is working in a company. So we have, let us say, person A who is working in a company, let us say company C or company C. Now, let us say that somehow A doesn't trust the company C. Maybe the reason is because he have recently joined and he's just working as a freelancer. He's supposed to only work for some amount of time, let us say a month. And he somehow is not very sure if he will get the payment after a month. So what company C does? They say, okay, no problem. We will give you a guarantee. Yeah, we will give you a guarantee of payment. So what is a guarantee of payment? The company C gives a check to A, which is post-dated. So the company C gives a check to A, which is a post-dated check. So A receives a check from company C of, let us say, 30th of the month. So he receives a check with the amount he's supposed to receive, and you can encash this check after 30 days. So what company C is giving A is a guarantee that the payment will be done after certain amount of time, which is on 30th. Now, A continues to work, and on 30th, he can encash the check. But keep in mind, the company already gave him a promise of the payment to be done in the form of a check, which end of the month A is able to use and get the money. So what is check? It's a promise of payment which can be done after a certain amount of time. And very similar to this case, here also, I'm going to return a promise which is going to be guarantee of job to be done after a certain amount of time. So now let us try to see how can we implement a similar structure here. To do that, we first need to create a promise object. Promise object. I'm calling it object because it is an object of the constructor promise. And to this promise, I'm going to provide a function. And this function has two functions available as parameters. One is resolved, another is reject. For now, we will not focus on reject. We will make it simple and only resolve. Now this resolve function is basically used to resolve the promise, like to encash the check, similar to resolve the promise in this example. Now, all this piece of code, I'm going to move inside the function that is provided to the promise object. All right, everything is the same, but the only difference now that's going to happen is that instead of returning sum, I'm going to resolve it because it is happening after 8 seconds, right? So like the check encashment was happening end of the month. Similar to that here, the promise resolution is happening after 8 seconds. So I'm just going to resolve it and pass the sum. But there is the function on line number 20, sorry, the code on line number 24 is expecting something to be returned. So what do I return here? I return him the promise object. So the promise object that I create actually is returned to the caller of the function. So the result actually becomes promise object. Correct? So now this is how I'm able to use a promise, which means I'm giving him a guarantee, the code that is calling the add function, that the job is going to be done after 8 seconds. And this is the promise object that is returned immediately. Now, let us try to again do one more final step. The final step is we still did not actually get the result. For example, you might think the job is done. It is not. If I now write here result and try to print, I will not get the result. Instead, I will just get an object which is a promise object. Similar to the employer example, if I get a check, that does not mean I've got the money. It just gives me the capability to encash the check on a certain day. Similar to that, this is just that check. It is not the actual, return value. So now if I just try to run this piece of code and see what is the output, it is saying object promise. That means a promise object is returned. However, the code executes, but I'm not able to see the output in front of me in the result variable. So how do I solve it? Well, it is very simple. Now, to solve this problem, we are going to now do result dot result. Instead of result, I'm going to give it a result. Instead of result, let's make it promise or result promise object. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to just write result promise object dot then. This is the function that is used to encash the promise. This is the function that is used to get the result. And inside this, I have to provide a function which will run when the promise is resolved. Or in a simplest sense, the moment resolve is called, it calls the function inside the then. That's all. Which means whenever the resolve is executed, it will also execute the function inside the then. And that is where the result lies. And I can just now do alert of result. So what is happening here? Let's understand again that the moment delay is complete, resolve is executed, which in turn executes the function which is inside the then, which means this particular function, and we are able to get the result. This is how we encash a promise. Now, if I save this piece of code and try to run it again, I will get the output. But of course, it will take time. So if we wait for some more time, we should be able to get the result, which is 9. Fantastic. So again, it's simple. The moment delay is complete, resolve is executed, and resolve is paired with then. Simple. Resolve is paired with then. which means they are basically paired function. So resolve calls this function, which is the callback function inside the then, and this particular sum is actually the result. And that is how we are able to now get the result of our addition after whatever delay we do. And that is why we need a promise. Now, guys, let us try to understand what happens when a promise fails. Now, this is a very simple addition example, but there are certain complex scenarios where the job can fail or it can pass also. For example, if I ask you to get coffee for me from a shop, then you will go to the shop, you will get coffee for me. But there is a possibility that the shop is closed, which means you are not able to do the operation. So in that case, you have not completely finished the job because the job has failed. You have not been able to get coffee for me because the shop was closed. Similarly, it is also possible that when we are doing certain operations, they can fail or they can succeed. So when an operation fails, we call resolve. Now let us understand what do we do when the operation fails. So now we have resolved. There is another function that is called reject, and this function runs when the job is unsuccessful or not complete. So let us take a very simple assumption that somehow we are not able to do the addition. So what we do, instead of doing the resolve, we are going to write reject, and here we can also write some message. Let us say maybe whatever may be the reason, but job incomplete due to some reason, let us say. So again, reject is a function that is called to intimate the caller that, sir, the job is not completely done for whatever the reason, which is passed as the message here. You can pass a message, which is a string. You can also pass a variable, object, or whatever you feel is needed for your particular requirement. So now, how do we respond to that? Well, we just need to now use another function which is called dot catch. And inside this, I'm going to provide a function which is going to run when reject is called, when the operation is incomplete. So inside that, let's write error message. And then I'm going to just alert the error message. So now this particular piece of code is handling the rejection of the promise. And here what I'm doing, I'm calling the reject function. And again, there is a pairing, which means the moment reject function is called, the function inside the catch is called. Whatever parameter we pass to the reject is the same parameter received by the function here inside the catch. So again, we have a pairing here. Let us just draw a simple arrow diagram to understand the pairing. Reject is paired with this function, and the parameter to the reject is paired with this parameter. Now, let us try to run this piece of code and see what is the output. So let us save this file and try to reload. And now we will see that after delay, we get the job is incomplete due to some reason. Now, don't worry about this red error message coming here. That is because whenever promise fails, it throws an error, which can be handled using try and catch and many other ways. We will understand that in the coming time. But for now, the important thing is that whenever a promise fails, then in that scenario, the function inside the catch runs and is able to respond to the user for whatever failure message you want to display to the user. So now we understand then and catch. So it's very simple that the function inside the then runs when the job is complete. Function inside catch runs when the job has failed. But we also need one more thing, that irrespective of the operation fails or operation succeeds, we want to display some message to the user. So let me show you. First is operation fails. Sorry, operation succeeds. In this case, resolve. 2, operation fails. In this case, reject. Third, operation complete. Operation complete means the operation is complete. There is a difference between fail, succeeds, and complete. Complete means the operation can succeed or fail, but finally it is complete. That means the code execution is done. Irrespective of the result, the task that was given is complete, though it has failed or succeeded, but it is complete. So in that case, we call the function called finally. So finally is called when the entire job is complete. Take an example. You get the check from the company, you go to the bank and you encash it. Now either you will get the amount or the check will bounce. But the entire operation you have finished, which is that you went to the bank, you encashed the check, and then you came to know the result. Similar to that, this particular finally function runs when the job is complete. It can fail or succeed, irrespective of that. So now I'm going to also write code to handle this third scenario where the operation has actually been complete. So let us write result promise ob dot finally. Now finally function callback doesn't have any message. Instead, we can just write alert operation finished. Maybe it can be successful or failed, but it is finished. That is how we do it. Now let us try to again run this piece of code. And of course, the operation will complete, and then after that, it will also display the message that the operation finished. Correct? So the finally always runs. Now you might be wondering, why do we need it? Can't we just print the message inside the then or catch? Well, we can, but you see it is conditional. For example, let us say I want to have a rotator, which tells me the status of the application that we are doing something. So in that scenario, before the operation starts, I want to show the loader. When the operation is complete, I want to hide the loader. In that case, hiding the loader should be done inside the finally. All the cleanup things that we need to do can be kept inside the finally, because irrespective whether the operation fails or succeeds, this is always going to run in the ending. So all the cleanup things can be kept inside the finally.